While the United States' entry into the war was delayed, total war's brutal reality had already gripped Europe. Total war, a defining characteristic of World War I, signified the mobilization of entire societies for the war effort. Unlike previous conflicts where civilian populations were largely spared, total war blurred the lines between soldiers and civilians. The concept wasn't entirely new. The American Civil War, particularly General Sherman's scorched earth march through Georgia, offered a glimpse into this new kind of warfare. Sherman's strategy aimed to cripple the Confederacy's war machine by destroying civilian infrastructure and resources, ultimately forcing their surrender. This foreshadowed the tactics employed on a grander scale in World War I. Trench warfare, another innovation of the American Civil War, became a hallmark of World War I. Confederate General Robert E. Lee's use of trenches around Richmond to slow the Union advance served as a blueprint for the extensive trench networks that dominated the Western Front. In essence, total war transformed World War I into a struggle between entire nations, not just opposing armies. Every facet of society, civilian and military alike, became a cog in the war machine. British civilians toiled in factories producing munitions, while German civilians rationed food supplies to support the troops. This complete mobilization blurred the distinction between innocent bystanders and active participants, a stark contrast to previous warfare. This unprecedented level of national commitment would define the brutal and devastating nature of World War I. Let's consider the concept of total war and why it would present unique challenges for the United States. Unlike nations where a strong sense of unified ethnicity and identity exists, the United States is a nation of immigrants. Most Americans have ancestral ties to European nations, making it difficult to adopt a stance where all Americans are unified against a single enemy. Our identities are inherently intertwined with our heritage. Even today, many Americans proudly trace their ancestry to nations like Norway. This diverse composition creates tension with the concept of total war, where national identity becomes a key component of the conflict. Consequently, America struggles with the very foundation of total war. Unfortunately, this led to a negative outcome, a backlash against fellow Americans. Driven by fear, individuals with German surnames were targeted, sometimes subjected to violence or ostracism. In response, many people with German heritage were compelled to anglicize their names to avoid scrutiny. This phenomenon highlights how divisions can be manufactured without even relying on racial differences. If you observe British, French, and German individuals side by side, visual distinctions may not be apparent until they engage in conversation. Nonetheless, a sense of otherness can be artificially created based on nationality. This demonstrates how fear can be a powerful tool, used to sow discord and pit Americans against each other under the guise of defending against the other. This World War I recruitment poster, "Destroy This Mad Brute," exemplifies the use of fear and dehumanization to promote enlistment. The poster depicts a monstrous, ape-like figure wearing a spiked helmet, a clear reference to German soldiers, steamrolling across a devastated Europe. This imagery portrays Germany as a barbaric force threatening to engulf the civilized world, symbolized by America's shores. In the giant's hand, we see a woman in distress, likely meant to represent American womanhood, vulnerability, and the need for protection. The poster exploits traditional gender roles, appealing to men's sense of duty to safeguard their loved ones. The poster's effectiveness lies in its manipulation of emotions. By portraying Germans as subhuman beasts, it dehumanizes the enemy and creates a stark distinction between us and them. This facilitates the act of killing, turning soldiers into exterminators rather than taking human lives. The message is clear: Germans are not worthy of human compassion, making their destruction justifiable. This approach backfired to an extent. While it encouraged some to enlist, it also fueled animosity towards German Americans within the United States. This highlights the dangers of dehumanization in wartime propaganda, a tactic that can fracture societies even as it seeks to unify them. Tsarist Russia's struggles in World War I proved to be a catalyst for revolution. Early defeats and economic hardship, including food shortages, fueled public discontent with the monarchy. This vulnerability was exacerbated by the Ottoman Empire's entry into the war, which effectively severed Russia's access to crucial supplies from the outside world. In March 1917, the frustrations culminated in the First Revolution. The Tsar was overthrown, and a provisional government led by Alexander Kerensky established a liberal democracy. Sadly, Kerensky's government proved to be short-lived. By November 1917, October according to the old Russian calendar, a second revolution led by the Bolsheviks, the Communist Party, toppled Kerensky's government. We'll discuss the Bolsheviks in more detail when we explore the Cold War. The existence of a liberal democratic Russia, even for a brief period, was significant for the United States. President Wilson's reluctance to join the war stemmed partly from his aversion to an alliance with the Tsarist monarchy. A democratic Russia might have been viewed more favorably by the U.S., potentially altering the course of the war. Germany, sensing an opening with Russia's collapse, sought to capitalize on the instability. Their strategy involved two key steps. First, they planned a massive offensive on the Western Front, intending to overwhelm the Allies. Then they would shift their forces eastward to consolidate control over Russia. This change in focus also allowed them to resume unrestricted submarine warfare, believing that even if the United States declared war, American troops could not be mobilized quickly enough to make a difference. It was a risky gamble, and one that would ultimately fail. To further hedge their bets, German Foreign Minister Arthur Zimmermann sent a coded telegram to Mexican President Venustiano Carranza. The telegram proposed an alliance against the United States should they enter the war. It also promised Mexico the return of territories lost to the Mexican-American War, a significant portion of the southwestern United States. Though Carranza did not respond, the telegram was intercepted and decoded by the British. Its contents were then strategically leaked to the American press. This move decisively shifted American public opinion in favor of war. The perception of German aggression on American soil, combined with the recent fall of the Tsarist regime, made Wilson's hesitation untenable. Amidst calls for retaliation, the United States declared war on Germany. American troops proved vital to the Allied cause. The balance of power, previously teetering on the edge, significantly shifted with the introduction of fresh American forces. The Allies began pushing back against Germany, who eventually recognized the futility of their position and negotiated a peace armistice before the Allies invaded their borders.
Please proceed to answer the questions in the assignment on Canvas. If you have any questions, you can post them in the open forum discussion or contact the professor using Canvas email.